Utopia or bust. Sometimes it feels like we're in a race between enlightenment or extinction, or somewhere in between. What does Pluto in Aquarius have to say about our trajectory? Hello, stargazers. Bryan Colter here, evolutionary astrologer. We're going to dive deep into what Pluto in Aquarius means over the next 20 years. My approach is threefold. Initially, we will dabble into the more predictive side of astrology and ask ourselves, how might we see Pluto, the planet of extremes, bring out the extremes of Aquarius in whatever timeline we find ourselves in? So how might that manifest itself? And then a big portion of evolutionary astrology is focusing on the question, how are we going to evolve? Pluto in Aquarius, what's the collective lesson? What does Pluto represent? And what is the positive and negative outcomes of us working through this lesson plan? And last but not least, how can we work with Pluto in Aquarius on a personal level? With that being said, let's go ahead and dive right in. As you can see, Pluto is now officially in Aquarius. It's been going back and forth over the Aquarian frontier since early 2023, but now it's officially in this sign until early of 2044. And as I said in the beginning of 2023, as it initially entered this sign, look for that 3-month window of time, early 2023, as a sneak peek preview of what's to come over the next 20 years. And there was a variety of things happened during that time. The biggest one, easily, was AI. Everybody was talking about AI all of a sudden as soon as Pluto entered Aquarius for the first time. And that is child's play compared to where we're headed, because Pluto in Aquarius represents rapid evolution, but there was our first clue. So obviously, one of the primary ways it's going to manifest itself is with technology. Now, at the beginning of this video, I presented it in an extreme way, a stark polarity between light and dark, utopia or bust, enlightenment or extinction. Okay, now that is an extreme way of framing this, but welcome to Pluto. Pluto highlights the most positive expression as well as the most negative expression of whatever symbol it's touching. One of the ways Pluto in Aquarius manifests is as it enters this sign, it creates this strong urge or feeling amongst the collective that we're on the precipice of something great or potentially catastrophic. You know, Aquarius is one of the most visionary of all the signs. It's associated with utopian ideals, technological advancements, decentralization, freedom, individuation, humanitarianism. These are all a part of the sign of Aquarius, the water bearer. And with Pluto in this sign, humanity tends to strive to realize idealistic visions of the future, sometimes at a great cost. And societies might swing between breakthroughs, inequality, for example, and technology, or collapse under the weight of poorly managed transformation. There's this sense that we're really playing for high stakes. Technology is key. Everything circles back to technology, whether we're talking about humanitarianism, cleaning up the oceans, creating utopian cities or whatever it is, breakthroughs in medical, curing cancer, etc. It all comes back to the core of this technological revolution. Now, in my opinion, Pluto in Aquarius is officially cementing us into the Aquarian age. These ages, they're 2,100-year cycles. It's tough to kind of pinpoint when they start. Different people have different opinions on when it started or if it started. I choose to just observe reality. In the early 1900s, we had the Wright brothers' first flight. We had military advancements, through World War II and beyond. And then we landed on the moon, 66 years after Wright brothers' first flight. And then we hit the age of information, the internet, so on, and here we are. So this Aquarian age, this 2,100-year cycle, didn't start on Tuesday at 3:32 p.m. Pacific, No, it comes like a wave. It's like 100 or 150-year wave where we start to feel it. We start to feel the acceleration of what we're learning with that sign, and we're officially in it. We started that wave, in my opinion, in the early 1900s, waiting for this moment, Pluto and Aquarius in this sign, really cementing us in this now. Now, part of Aquarius, as I've been saying, is rapid evolution. That's part of the Aquarian age as well. Us cemented into it. Hold on to your butts. It's going to be a wild ride. And as I said, technology will transform everything. And I think one of the most profound ways this will manifest is in physics. Now, we've been kind of stuck on string theory for quite some time, many, many decades. And many have said within the physics world, like Eric Weinstein, for example, that we're kind of, it's holding us back through leaps in consciousness. And he says when we have a breakthrough in physics, reality itself changes before us in an instant. And I think something like that will happen while Pluto is in Aquarius. Now, Pluto, highlighting the extreme dark and light of this sign. Now, the dark is not too hard to imagine. Isn't it interesting? In the 1900s, we started cranking out all these books and movies about dystopian futures as we're entering into the Aquarian age. There's no accident there. So, Hunger Games, Universal Soldier, Terminator, Star Wars, even in a certain way, creates these darker elements in the future, okay, which are potentials. There is a potential for a darker future. How that can be made manifest is based on the actions of us individuals within the collective as we co-create the human future. Now, since we're having this beautiful new moon in Sagittarius, one of the most optimistic, hopeful, and faith-based signs, it's important for us to keep our eyes on the horizon in a very optimistic fashion and really flirt with our future in such a way and really ask ourselves, how can we manifest the most positive potential timeline instead of just recreating the dystopian movies of our present times? So the dark is obvious, especially with military. In the future, seeing robots and drones fight each other, augmented humans, super soldiers. I really think this is going to be a part of our future in a certain way. And then we also have the transhumanism movement, which can be quite negative. That's easy to see as well. Where we're kind of messing with soul incarnate, we're messing with consciousness, with technological implants, becoming part robot, especially with the transhumanist movement amongst the elites, attempting to become immortal, gods incarnate. Dubious pursuit, but we'll probably see that too. However, recently, using implants, people who were paralyzed can now walk. People who were blind can now see for the first time. Isn't that a positive thing? So we don't want to only focus on the negative, dwelling in fear consciousness. Sure, some negatives will manifest itself, but we can work with this technological revolution in a positive way, in a way that suits us individually for the greater good. Now, technology commingling with consciousness, okay. That's kind of playing God. That can be tricky, but it could also be a positive thing. Here's the metaphor. Imagine it's 2038. This brilliant scientist working with the technology of that year and AI and God knows what else creates an invention called the consciousness chair. And when the person sits in the consciousness chair, it induces a conscious out-of-body experience where all of a sudden the soul is separated from the body, looking down on the body in the chair, can see the silver cord attached to the body, and can now navigate freely within the astral or fourth dimension, or better yet, the noetical plane or fifth dimension. And here, freedom to the highest degree, because Uranus represents freedom, leveraging technology, your Aquarius represents that as well, as we can travel in higher dimensions of reality. Now, the internet came about during the entrance of the Aquarian age. We went from learning through libraries at a very slow pace to learning very quickly through the internet. And learning quickly through the internet is child's play or considered very slow compared to having an out-of-body experience, because as soon as you think something, you immediately travel there. You think of your dead father, all of a sudden you're having a conversation with them, not in an imaginary way. You're literally having a conversation with that soul in the astral plane. Or you think about one of your favorite gurus or something like that. Suddenly you're talking to them. Or you want to remember your past life or ask big questions like, why am I here? What's the purpose of my life? What am I here to learn? Learning about past lives, visiting the so-called Akashic records. This is part of reality in these higher dimensions. And if we're able to have a conscious out-of-body experience, we can access that in a rapid acceleration of our learning in so doing. There are many humans on the planet today that can have conscious out-of-body experiences. And this is because they've done the initial prerequisite training, meditation, very intense, specific meditation techniques to achieve that goal of having a conscious out-of-body experience. But in order to get to that goal, it's arduous. It takes forever. It takes months or years or sometimes even decades for some people to train their mind to the point to where they can actually do that. Whereas in the future, and this is one of my greatest interests, is how can technology have a positive relationship with the exploration of consciousness? I think that will be part of it too. And that can be a very good thing. So in the face of playing for high stakes, the question becomes, and this gets more into evolutionary astrology, how can I individually and us collectively work with Pluto for our own betterment and evolution so that we'll be more likely to achieve this more utopian future instead of dystopian future? The reason Pluto is the planet of extremes is it triggers, let's say, the pain body of the collective. All the traumas of the past rising to the surface, okay? It can be potentially traumatizing time, but ultimately it's about releasing that which gets triggered to transform, renew ourselves, and regenerate as humanity. So the collective transformation through the healing of the pain body. Now, how do you heal? Well, technology reigns supreme over the next 20 years. That can also help us to heal, but we can say some more things about that later. Healing is the goal, as well as dredging up the pain. Yeah. The goal, once healed, is we move forward in a more individuated, freedom-based, decentralized state of consciousness, individually and collectively. The pain, however, will often come out as a sort of cold selfishness. And really, we're playing with these two ideas, the higher octave potential of individuation and the lower octave potential of pain manifested as dissociative states and a cold selfishness. Because Aquarius is an air sign. It's on the mental plane. So if we get too stuck in our heads or not enough in our hearts, we can kind of get shut down. Feelings of disassociation and alienation are associated with Aquarius. And if that manifests, people will begin to hermetically seal feelings from their life. A positive manifestation of this is evolving in the direction of a certain comfort in being yourself. I am what I am. It's the planet of individuation. It's also the genius archetype, being free to express your genius and your uniqueness. And to be that without expectation of external validation or being hurt by judgment. It's like what you think of me doesn't matter to me, that sort of thing. That's a healthy individuation. For example, think about the Amish folk. Okay? They live very differently than most people. And I would imagine, I don't know any Amish people, but I would imagine they feel somewhat alienated from the world to a certain degree. And I think many of them are okay with that. We are what we are. We're doing our thing. What other people think of me is none of my business. And they kind of just go about their life. That's a healthy representation of being very, very different in the world and just being okay with that. What you think of me doesn't matter much to me. Now, doesn't matter much to me, there can be some coldness there as well. So it's really this delicate balance of the usefulness of not caring and the danger of not caring. There's a paradox there with Aquarius. So the dark side of Pluto in Aquarius is a sort of distancing from one's heart, being stuck in head, not in heart. And if you look at something dark, something horrific in life, We can distance ourselves. Like, for example, PTSD, a Vietnam War veteran saw some terrible things, and they come back and they have the 1,000-yard stare where they're staring off in the distance or having, violent nightmares, screaming nightmares, PTSD. There can be a coldness, a detachment, a state of disassociation that can happen there. So what is happening collectively as the pain or the dark rises to the surface, we can get a sort of PTSD trauma signature and retreat into ourselves and develop this dissociative cold selfishness. That's the dark side. The positive side is to seek to transform ourselves, that which is painful as it rises. How will we heal as the pain body rises and gets triggered? Well, again, all roads are connected to technology, in my opinion, with this sign. Maybe we'll have some technological breakthrough and a deeper understanding about what's actually going on with human psychology and catapult us from our current embryonic understanding of human psychology into something more comprehensive that ultimately considers consciousness as key, because that's the most important ingredient. And we have breakthroughs in healing the psyche instead of just playing, whack-a-mole with symptoms as we ingest pills. Technology connected to consciousness. Okay, that can be a very positive thing. And we can heal from that trauma through technology. Here's another more natural form of technology, so to speak, psychedelics. Now, psychedelics became very much in the scene, so to speak, back in the 60s. And what was going on astrologically then was Pluto was conjunct Uranus. Now, Pluto conjunct Uranus isn't exactly the same as Pluto in Aquarius, but it's very similar because Uranus is the planet that rules Aquarius. So as Pluto was conjunct Uranus, all of a sudden, you have this hippie revolution, so to speak, and people were having breakthroughs in consciousness using psychedelics. And even today, they're doing Aquarian, let's say, scientific studies on the usefulness of ketamine therapy or mushroom therapy or ibogaine or whatever. There's many different kinds where they're understanding that, oh yeah, we can heal PTSD quite well actually with this if it's done in a safe environment by a trained professional. I think Pluto and Aquarius will go beyond psychedelics into something more literally technology, but we can see the seed was planted initially back in the 60s during Pluto and Uranus. Now, more broadly speaking, the world is trying to heal and move beyond, evolve beyond the control mechanisms of the world, keeping us in a form of slavery or bondage, having a lack of freedom. And this was very obvious while Pluto was in Capricorn the last 20 years, the symbol of control. Okay, now we're moving from Capricorn control into Aquarius freedom. Now, of course, technology can be leveraged to, keep that intact, the control intact. But fundamentally, Pluto and Aquarius, the wave of change is going much more in this freedom-based direction. Now, moving forward, there are 6 transformative, we could say, spiritual trials for humanity over the next 20 years. First one I already mentioned, dissociative states of consciousness, just not giving a damn, being too much in head rather than heart, manifesting as this shut down, cold selfishness. Here's another one, alienation, feeling like we don't fit in, where minority groups are being projected upon. I remember when I first started being an astrologer, I'd go to some social gatherings and somebody'd ask me, what do you do for a living? I say, I'm an astrologer. And they say, oh, I've been thinking about getting a telescope. Do you have one? How big is it? I said, no, I'm not an astronomer. I'm an astrologer. And then they go, oh, when they realize what I actually am. And I don't know if you've seen that meme with Homer Simpson kind of distancing himself back into the shrubbery, trying to make himself invisible as this person awkwardly ends the conversation, they're projecting a judgment, 75% of people thereabouts don't believe in astrology, so there I felt judged in that moment. Okay, so we use this as a metaphor for groups of people. There's sort of a bifurcation of different unique groups of people over the next 20 years feeling separated from each other and living in very, very different ways. So alienation amongst group of people will probably be a big theme. Another big one I already mentioned, living in the head and ignoring the heart. Okay, where a lot of folks will live in this reality as sort of a disembodied head. And alternate reality and alternate virtual realities, let's say, will be a big theme. Makes me think of the movie Ready Player One, which, if you haven't seen it, I recommend it. It's a great movie where it's this dystopian future where people are, playing games in a literal virtual reality. And I think that will be a part of our future as well. But that will create the challenge as people do that of being kind of trapped in their head, trapped in this virtual reality instead of the actual virtual reality that we find ourselves in as a soul incarnate. Because I believe the soul incarnates in a human body and it comes from the actual reality, being the spirit world and the higher dimensions of reality, passes through the veil of spiritual amnesia, incarnates, we forget where we come from. So we're living in this virtual reality now, in my opinion. And if people are going towards other virtual realities, which people are already doing through gaming and movies and such, but this will become much more dramatic over the next 20 years as we continue to live as disembodied heads, just sort of floating through life in the headspace, Aquarius, the air sign, on the mental plane. Here's another big spiritual challenge, condemning the good things of the past. We are headed very fast towards this decentralized future, boldly going in that direction. But radical change can be quite destructive if we completely leave behind the wisdom of the past. It's important not to forget some of that wisdom, otherwise we can really go out of balance. And then we have the seduction of the dark side of progress, the seduction of AI and technology. Pluto is linked to sexuality on some level. So it's, makes me think of like sex robots running rampant through the world, and really people falling into the trap of those unhealthy desires. This will be another great challenge that we're trying to learn through and grow beyond. And then lastly, we could be overlooking realms that transcend rational and quantitative understanding. We can't do that. Consciousness is key. Technology having a positive effect on consciousness is one of the higher octave potentials here, but there is a danger of missing out on that. A good question to ask is, what's the prize if we get it right? Well, enhanced freedom is part of it. A better alignment between your soul's intention and your life is another part of it. A doubling of your creative energy and just energy in general. Because if you think about it, if you go through the Pluto process of transformation and heal the pain body, that energy you were previously expending to keep those wounds buried, the suppressed and repressed emotions now down, as you heal, that can be freed up in a more useful and beneficial way for your own creative pursuits. And beyond that, just on the technology side, that will produce a lot more individual freedom as well. I saw a great meme online. It said, I don't want technology to do my art while I go do the dishes. I want technology to do my dishes while I create more art. It's such a beautiful line. And I think that will be a big part of it. I mean, everybody has their at-home robot doing all the chores, and a lot of the jobs in the world are done by technology. People will be able to go down directions that they actually want to go down. That's my hope, where they can use their creative energy for their own betterment and evolution and happiness and joy and all that. There's a line from Star Trek, resistance is futile. Change is happening. It's happening very fast. Embracing radical change is, in my opinion, the best thing to do over the next 2 decades. Obviously not to embrace all radical change, because some of it will be so radical, it's like, no, thank you. But some of it will be really good. And to just be very aware of that which is good and to embrace it instead of resisting change, kicking and screaming. I remember, iPhones came out in 2007, I think. And fast forward 5 years, I still got my flip phone and I was resisting getting the smartphone. Everybody was getting one. I was like, I don't need that. I was resisting it. And I said, I'll just keep my dumb phone. That was kind of my joke line. And I finally got one, and I didn't regret it. I was like, oh, this technology is amazing, and so this is just a metaphor for, I think, a lot of pockets of people who will be resisting change. Some of that will be good, but some of it might be detrimental to their own growth and evolution. So to keep an open mind, again, Aquarius is about individualistic expression of self and to embrace change, but to do it in your own unique way and to embrace that which develops consciousness. These are the core evolutionary intentions, with the goal being to expand our consciousness. Thanks for listening.